Good evening. As global tensions rise, tonight we examine the United States' expanding military campaign against the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea, the fallout on global shipping, and the consequences for American forces. We'll also take a close look at President Trump's new tariff strategy, hailed by some as economic patriotism, but criticized by others as a costly gamble. And finally, the world gathers to honor Pope Francis, marking the end of one of the most consequential papacies in modern history. Let's begin. First, let's start with the Red Sea, where a vital global shipping corridor has become a flashpoint. As you can see on the map behind me, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait connects the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea, making it one of the most strategic choke points in the world. Late last year, the USS Carney intercepted missiles and drones fired by the Houthis on October 19th. The U.S. Carney, a Navy destroyer, intercepted missiles and drones launched from Yemen. This footage shows the kind of missile defense activity that's becoming routine in the region as U.S. vessels now patrol under constant threat. And these are our children we're talking about. These are our American citizens. These are our patriots and family members, and we should be worried about that, I think. In response to this, the U.S. has launched Operation Prosperity Guardian, a coalition of allied naval forces working to secure commercial shipping lanes. Despite these efforts, Houthi attacks have continued, disrupting international commerce. With President Trump's return to office in January, U.S. military posture in the Middle East has shifted sharply. Under the directive of U.S. Central Command, Operation Rough Rider was launched, an aggressive and sustained air campaign aimed at dismantling the Houthi militant network in Yemen. According to a statement released by U.S. Central Command on April 27th, over 800 targets have been struck since the campaign began on March 15th. CENTCOM reports strikes have killed hundreds of Houthi fighters and numerous senior leaders, including officials overseeing missile and drone operations. Destroyed targets include command and control facilities, advanced weapons manufacturing sites, and storage locations for anti-ship missiles, drones, and uncrewed surface vessels. The campaign also targeted the Ras Isa port, which CENTCOM says was a critical source of revenue and operational fuel for the Houthis. Its destruction is expected to disrupt both combat operations and financial channels supporting further attacks. The operation has been supported by two carrier strike groups, the Harry S. Truman and the Carl Vinson, and is being carried out with an emphasis on precision and intelligence-based targeting. U.S. commanders emphasized the mission's aim to restore freedom of navigation and reestablish American deterrence in the region. CENTCOM also stated that Iran's support remains vital to the Houthis' ability to operate, warning that the group's ongoing attacks are made possible by continued backing from the Iranian regime. Military officials say pressure will continue to increase until objectives are met. So here we're seeing special forces training by the Houthis, and it's important to remember that special forces means something different in every country. By our standards here in America, I wouldn't consider this special by any means. I mean, they're jumping through fire hoops. And you can see here they're shooting American, British, and Israeli flags. So we will have more on this, more developments on this as the story goes along. But as of right now, we are in a hot war with the Houthis, and I believe this is being underreported. So I thought it would be important to shed some light on that today. Staying up to date with events around the world can be difficult, where it's impossible to consult one single source for the full story. Narratives that shape public opinion often just reinforce media and corporate-backed vested interests. Information is released faster than it can be verified, and reporting often favors clickbait content over high-quality journalism. It's hard to know what information to trust. That's why I've been using Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare the coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable the reporting is, and who owns them. They even have a blind spot feed that highlights news that is being disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other. Get news from thousands of sources worldwide in one place. See who is funding each publication, compare coverage, and think critically about the information you consume. Verify your information and know where your news is coming from. Personally, I've been using Ground News for their bias tool. I love to compare and contrast headlines and see what kind of diction they're using from one side to the other, and usually you can find a pretty implicit bias in just the words that they're using. I also use the bias tool to help me formulate video ideas and approach the public in a more neutral way. So head on over to check.ground.news/americaninterviews or subscribe through the link in the description to get 15% off any subscription. I personally use the Vantage plan to get unlimited access to every feature. Your subscription not only helps American Interviews grow, but it also supports Ground News as they make the media landscape more transparent. A U.S. airstrike hit a migrant detention center in Sada, killing at least 68 African migrants. What you're seeing here is the aftermath of the footage. Use discretion. These images may be disturbing or distressing to some viewers. The U.S. military says it's conducting a full investigation of the civilian casualties, and they're making an assessment on it. Meanwhile, American forces continue to face risks. Just days ago, a U.S. Navy FA-18E Super Hornet was lost at sea off the deck of the USS Harry Truman. They're saying this was a routine incident. I'm not sure how this got chalked up as a routine incident, but I'm sure more details will come out as things develop. Take a look at this animation of, it's a graphic really, of global shipping routes. Vessels are now detouring thousands of miles around Africa, around the peninsula, raising costs, increasing delivery times, and putting pressure on supply chains worldwide. Trump's tariffs, is it an economic revival or a risky gamble? President Trump is taking aim at global trade with sweeping new tariffs. Here you can see an executive order being signed that the administration has called Liberation Day.
We have things happening in terms of jobs and investment, the likes of which I don't think we've ever seen. If you look at, let's say, $4 to $5 trillion in a period of a month and a half, that's even more than you do with your concerts, which are always sold out, right? Nobody's ever seen numbers. And think of it, where Apple's at $500 billion, as I said, but they always used to spend that money in China. Now they're spending it here. That means they're going to build, now they don't have any tariffs. Remember, there are no tariffs if you do your product here, if you build whatever it is in the USA.
Tariffs continue, and the order to impose a 10% tariff on all imported goods and up to 145% on certain Chinese products. You heard me correctly. This graphic breaks it down. Affected categories include electronics, textiles, and key industrial inputs like steel. Retailers say that the effects are already visible, and as this tweet here from I'm blanking his name, but we'll flash it on the screen here. You can see that the prices have already increased, and companies they're wanting you to know where these increases are coming from. Analysts expect global container shipping to drop by 1% this year, a rare contraction. It's a direct response to falling imports and rising costs tied to the new tariffs.
Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump.
Seems like a bold statement to make this early in the presidency, but we're just going to have to wait and see as time will tell. Personally, I don't think U.S. companies were given a big enough on-ramp to these incoming tariffs. They should have had a lot more time to build facilities, to manufacture things, have time to train new hires. There's just so many things that go into manufacturing that all of the sudden they're just going to up and start their manufacturing in the U.S. seems a little nuts to me, but time will tell, I suppose. The world came together in Rome this weekend to honor the life and legacy of Pope Francis. What you're seeing now is the massive turnout at St. Peter's Square, where over 250,000 mourners gathered to say goodbye to Pope Francis. Many global dignitaries attended, heads of state, religious leaders, and pilgrims from across the world attended the funeral masses. Pope Francis chose a simple wooden casket, a final act of humility that reflected his lifelong message of compassion and service.
Alle ore 7:35 del mattino.
Pope Francis led the Catholic Church through challenges and reforms, advocating for climate action, supporting migrants, and calling for greater inclusion. A controversial pope to some, but to many, he was loved. From conflict in the Red Sea to economic turbulence at home, and a global farewell to Pope Francis in Rome. These are the events shaping our world, and we will continue to track them in the days ahead. Thank you for joining me, and good night.